Achilles was one of the greatest heroes in Greek mythology. He was known for his strength, bravery, and skill in battle. His story takes place during the Trojan War, a legendary conflict between the Greeks and the city of Troy. Achilles was the son of a mortal man, Peleus, and a sea goddess named Thetis. When Achilles was a baby, Thetis wanted to make him immortal. She dipped him into the river Styx, whose waters were said to make a person invulnerable. But she held him by his heel, and that part of his body never touched the water. Because of this, Achilles grew up strong and nearly impossible to harm, but his heel remained his only weak spot. Achilles was then trained by a wise centaur named Chiron, who taught him everything from fighting to music. He became a fearless warrior and unmatched in skill. When the Trojan War began, the Greeks asked Achilles to join them. At first, his mother Thetis tried to hide him by disguising him as a girl and sending him to live among women on the island of Skyros. But the Greek hero Odysseus discovered Achilles by offering gifts, including weapons. When Achilles reached for the sword, Odysseus knew he had found him. Achilles agreed to join the war. In battle, he was unstoppable, cutting through enemy lines and defeating many Trojan warriors. During the war, he had a falling out with Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek army. Agamemnon had taken a woman named Briseis from Achilles, which deeply insulted him. In anger, Achilles withdrew from the fighting and refused to help the Greeks. Without Achilles, the tide of the war turned. The Trojans, led by the noble Hector, began to win battles and push the Greeks back. Achilles' closest friend, Patroclus, begged him to return to the war. Achilles still refused, but he allowed Patroclus to wear his armor and lead the Myrmidons into battle. Patroclus fought bravely, but he was killed by Hector. When Achilles learned of his friend's death, he was heartbroken and furious. He finally returned to battle, seeking revenge. Achilles fought like a man possessed. He slaughtered countless Trojans and eventually faced Hector in single combat. After a fierce duel, Achilles killed Hector and dragged his body behind his chariot around the walls of Troy. Eventually, King Priam of Troy, Hector's father, came to Achilles and begged for his son's body. Moved by the old man's grief, Achilles returned Hector's body for a proper funeral. But Achilles' time was running out. He had been warned that if he returned to battle, he would die young. Sure enough, not long after Hector's death, Achilles was killed. Different stories say different things about how it happened. The most famous version says that Paris, Prince of Troy, shot Achilles in the heel with an arrow, possibly guided by the god Apollo. The arrow struck his only vulnerable spot, and Achilles died. After his death, Achilles was honored as a great hero. His name lived on in stories, songs, and legends for thousands of years.
Long ago, in the ancient world of Greek mythology, there lived a brilliant inventor named Daedalus. He was a master craftsman, an architect of genius, and a man of great creativity. But Daedalus was also a prisoner. He and his young son, Icarus, were trapped on the island of Crete. They had been imprisoned by King Minos, who feared that Daedalus might reveal the secrets of his infamous labyrinth, the maze that held the monstrous Minotaur. The island was beautiful, surrounded by endless blue sea, but it was also a cage. The king controlled every ship and every route. There was no escape by land or water, so Daedalus looked to the sky. Using feathers he gathered from birds, Daedalus began to craft wings, not just one pair, but two. He used wax to hold the feathers together and leather straps to attach them to their arms. Day after day, he worked, showing Icarus how to fly, how to glide, how to catch the wind like a bird. When the wings were finally ready, Daedalus gave Icarus a warning. "Fly between the extremes," he said. "Don't fly too low, or the sea spray will soak your wings and drag you down. But don't fly too high, either the sun will melt the wax. Stay in the middle, and you will be safe." Icarus listened. He nodded, but like many young people, he felt a wild excitement inside. He wanted to fly, not just to escape, but to soar. And so, early one morning, Daedalus and Icarus took to the skies. At first, everything was perfect. The wind carried them gently, and they soared over the cliffs of Crete, higher than the waves, free at last. Fishermen looked up from their boats and gasped at the sight. Two figures flying like gods. Daedalus stayed steady, watching his son, but Icarus felt the thrill of the air beneath him, the rush of wind in his hair. The higher he flew, the more powerful he felt. He forgot his father's warning. He rose higher and higher, climbing toward the sun, laughing with joy. But the heat grew stronger. The wax that held his wings began to soften. One feather came loose, then another, and then his wings fell apart. Icarus plummeted from the sky. Daedalus turned just in time to see his son fall spinning, tumbling, crying out, and then disappearing into the sea below. Daedalus searched the waves, but Icarus was gone. Grief-stricken, Daedalus flew on, eventually reaching safety in Sicily. But he never truly escaped. He carried the weight of that loss for the rest of his life. The sea where Icarus fell is still called the Icarian Sea.
A long time ago in ancient Ireland, there was a young boy named Fionn McCool. He was clever, curious, and full of questions about the world. But most of all, Fionn wanted to be wise. Now, in those days, people believed that the greatest wisdom in all of Ireland came from a magical fish, the Salmon of Knowledge. This salmon had eaten 9 hazelnuts that fell into the well of wisdom, and by doing so, it gained all the knowledge of the world. It was said that whoever first ate the salmon would gain that wisdom too. For many years, a poet and druid named Fnagus lived beside the river Boyne, trying to catch the salmon. He was a wise man already, but he dreamed of catching the salmon and becoming wiser than anyone who had ever lived. Day after day, he fished patiently, waiting for the moment the salmon would appear. One day, Fionn came to Fnagus, asking to be his student. The old man agreed. Fionn helped him with chores, gathered wood, and listened carefully to his lessons. Time passed, and the two grew close. Then, one quiet morning, everything changed. As the sun rose, Fnagus saw a flash of silver in the water, and he knew, after all those years, he had finally caught the Salmon of Knowledge. Trembling with excitement, Fnagus brought the fish to shore. He looked at it with wide eyes, knowing that everything he had waited for was finally within reach. But he was tired from the struggle and didn't want to ruin his prize. So he told Fionn, "Cook the salmon for me, but do not eat even a bite. It must be mine alone." Fionn nodded and set to work. He turned the fish over the fire carefully, making sure it cooked just right. At one point, a blister formed on the skin of the fish. Without thinking, Fionn pressed it down with his thumb and burned himself. Instinctively, he put his thumb in his mouth to soothe the pain. In that single moment, everything changed. When Fnagus returned, he could see something was different. There was a brightness in Fionn's eyes, a stillness in his face. He asked, "Did you eat any of the fish?" "No," said Fionn, "but I did burn my thumb and put it in my mouth." Fnagus stared at the boy. He understood what had happened. The knowledge from the salmon had passed into Fionn through that small taste. Fate had chosen the boy, not the old poet. With a deep sigh, Fnagus handed the salmon to Fionn. "It was meant for you," he said quietly. "I waited all my life for this fish, but the wisdom was never meant to be mine." From that day on, whenever Fionn needed guidance or knowledge, he would put his thumb in his mouth, and all the answers would come to him. Fionn grew up to be a great leader and hero, the wise and brave chief of the Fena, a band of warriors who protected Ireland. And his name is still remembered today, not only for his strength and courage, but for the deep wisdom he carried, all because of one magical salmon. And that is the story of the Salmon of Knowledge. Long ago, in the land of ancient Greece, there lived a brave young man named Perseus. He was the son of Danae, a mortal woman, and Zeus, the king of the gods. Perseus lived a quiet life on an island with his mother, until one day everything changed. The king of the island, Polydex, wanted to marry Danae, but Perseus didn't trust him. To get Perseus out of the way, the king came up with a plan. He told Perseus to bring him a gift, something impossible. He demanded the head of Medusa, the most feared of all monsters. Medusa was one of the 3 Gorgons, terrifying sisters with snakes for hair and a stare that turned anyone to stone. She was once a beautiful woman, but after she angered the goddess Athena, she was cursed. Now, Anyone who looked into her eyes was instantly frozen into stone. Everyone thought Perseus would never return. But Perseus was not alone. The gods were watching over him. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Hermes, the messenger god, came to his aid. They gave him powerful gifts: a polished bronze shield, a sharp sword, and winged sandals that let him fly. He also received a magic helmet of invisibility and a special bag to safely carry Medusa's head. With the help of the gods, Perseus set off on his dangerous journey. He flew far and wide, over oceans and mountains, until he found the edge of the world where the Gorgons lived. He approached the dark cave where Medusa slept. Her two monstrous sisters guarded her, but they were fast asleep. Perseus knew he couldn't look directly at Medusa, so he held up his polished shield like a mirror and looked at her reflection instead. Carefully, silently, he moved closer. Medusa stirred, her snake hair hissing and writhing in the air. She began to wake up, but before she could open her eyes, Perseus raised his sword and struck, cutting off her head in one swift motion. At that very moment, two magical beings sprang from Medusa's body: the winged horse Pegasus and a warrior named Chrysaor. Perseus quickly placed Medusa's head in the special bag and flew away, using his winged sandals. Her sisters screamed in fury and chased him, but with the helmet of invisibility he escaped unseen. On his journey home, Perseus encountered more danger. He passed through Ethiopia, where he saw a princess named Andromeda chained to a rock. A sea monster was about to devour her. Without hesitation, Perseus drew his sword and slayed the beast, rescuing Andromeda. The two fell in love. At last, Perseus returned to the island. King Polydex was shocked to see him alive. When the cruel king refused to leave Danae alone, Perseus revealed Medusa's head. With just one glance, the king and his men were turned to stone. Peace returned. Perseus gave Medusa's head to the goddess Athena, who placed it on her shield, the Aegis, as a symbol of protection and power. And so, his courage, cleverness, and the help of the gods allowed him to defeat one of the greatest monsters in Greek mythology. Long ago, in the hills of County Limerick, lived the O'Brien family, an old Gaelic name said to be watched by a Banshee. For generations, the elders claimed she followed their line through famine, plague, and war. Whenever death drew near, her cry could be heard in the night, keening before anyone knew a soul had passed. Sean O'Brien, the last of the chieftain's line, lived in a whitewashed cottage near the River Meg with his daughter, Mare, a few cows, and an old collie named Don. One cold evening near Soin, the ancient time when the veil between worlds grows thin, Sean sat by the fire smoking his pipe. Outside, wind howled and Don growled low, eyes fixed on the door. "Quiet, boy," Sean muttered, though his hand trembled. Mare was outside, gathering herbs before the frost. She froze as a sound drifted from beyond the trees, a long, broken wail. It wasn't human grief, but something older, heavier, as if the land itself were mourning. She ran inside. Di heard it. The cry. "What kind?" he asked. "Like a woman, but not alive." His face went pale. "Did you see her?" "No, just the voice." But Don heard it too. They spoke no more that night, but neither slept. At dawn, word came from the village. Sean's cousin Eamon had died suddenly in the night. No illness, no sign. The Banshee had come. Mare sought out old Nuala, half-blind and said to have the sight. When she told her of the cry, Nuala only nodded. "She follows the blood," the old woman said. "Not out of spite, but sorrow. She cries for the old names." "Can she be seen?" Mare asked. "Sometimes, on moonlit nights, near water." They say she sits combing her long silver hair with a bone comb, but never touch her comb, child, nor speak her name after dark. She belongs to the other world. After that, Mare noticed the signs. A knock at the window when no one was there. A distant wail that silenced the dog. Once, she glimpsed a woman in grey, barefoot and weeping in the fog. No one else saw her, but Mare knew. Years passed. When old Sean finally died, the cry came again. Not loud, just a soft, sorrowful breath on the wind. The neighbours said they heard it too. And from that day on, the O'Brien name carried its old weight of pride, of memory, and of the thin line between this world and the next. They say the Banshee does not weep for the dead, but for the living who must say goodbye.
Where magic still touched the land, there lived a noble lord named Lear. He was one of the Tuatha Dé Danann, a magical people said to have ruled Ireland long before written history. Lear was a proud and powerful man, but more than anything, he loved his 4 children. The eldest was Fionnuala, gentle and wise. Her younger brother I was brave and kind. And then there were the twins, Fiachra and Con, playful and full of life. Their mother, Ava, died when they were very young, and grief fell over the household. To comfort Lear, the High King sent him a new bride, Ava's own sister, named Aoife. At first, Aoife was kind, but as time passed, her heart grew jealous. She saw how much Lear loved his children, perhaps more than he loved her, and slowly, that jealousy turned dark. One warm summer day, Aoife took the children on a journey to the calm waters of Lake Derivara. When they arrived, she stepped away from the chariot and whispered ancient words of magic. "You will be swans," she said, "for 900 years. White as snow, with voices sweet as song." In a flash of light and sorrow, the children were transformed into 4 beautiful white swans. But their minds remained unchanged. They could still think and speak and sing. When Lear heard what had happened, he rushed to the lake. The swans flew to him and called out. "Father, it is us," said Fionnuala, her voice clear and soft. "We are still here. Do not forget us." Heartbroken, Lear cursed Aoife for her cruelty. The druids of the magical people punished her, turning her into a spirit of the air, doomed to wander the skies forever. But the curse on the children could not be broken. They would spend 300 years on Lake Derivara, 300 on the stormy Sea of Moyle, and 300 more near the lonely western shores of Inish Glora. Through bitter cold and crashing waves, the swans stayed together. They sang songs of longing and memory, songs that floated across the land, telling their story to all who would listen. Centuries passed. Kingdoms fell. New faiths arrived. And finally, when the last 300 years had come and gone, the children heard the ringing of a bell from a nearby monastery. A kind monk found the swans and listened to their tale. As the bell rang again, the curse was broken. The swans returned to human form, old, frail, and weary from their long exile. The monk baptized them, and soon after, they passed peacefully into the next world, free at last. Today, the story of the children of Lear lives on in Irish songs and stories, a tale of love, loss, and the unbreakable bond between family.